Hello, little creatures. We have Malsacrus Decreaser, who's a student of the I Ching, author and teacher. He recently has authored a unique interpretation of the Book of Changes, presenting it as an interactive experience akin to the personality test, Choose Your Own Adventure. He is also currently developing a I Ching inspired children's book. For further insights and consultation services, follow his Facebook page, Fording the River. So you told me you've been doing this for 30 years. How did this start from you and what made you continue it for so long?
So it started in earnest. I had a vague knowledge of it, but a friend of mine, when I was about 15 years old, gave me a copy of the I Ching, of Wilhelm's translation. And I was in crisis at the time. I was 15 years old. So, of course, I was in crisis as a teenager, always in crisis, right? And I started fooling around with it. I already had some interest in that sort of study, in esoteric studies, and I had a working knowledge of tarot. But, I just started using it casually for maybe 10 years or so, until I really started to become obsessed with the idea of learning it as a language, like not the ancient Chinese ideograms, but the firm and the yielding lines, and being able to just read the lines as if the lines themselves were ideograms. They kind of are, but I became really interested in just learning the language of the I Ching, because I sort of flashed on what was happening, that's what I was looking at. And I mean, what drives us? Why did I really start doing it? Who knows? Because it's who I am. Right. So, and it's just been ever since. I like to joke, I've only read one book in the last 20 years. I'm just completely obsessed. That's not true. I read books, but really a lot of study over the last 15, 20 years. Became really, really enamored with it.
Wow, what an honor. Thank you for being here to share the 30 years, some of the 30 years with us. And yeah, I find the I Ching is the most accurate system that I've ever used for divination. And I feel the most synchronicities with it out of anything. The tarot, I feel, has its own agenda, but the I Ching has more of a purity to it. As you were talking about, it's who you are. In human design, my deity is the keepers of the wheel. So I feel like it's something to do with my closeness to the void. Do you feel that you have maybe more of the void than others?
Probably by a margin, yeah. Is that blueberries?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I'm a little
Increasing my
jealous.
intuition and green tea.
I'll reach through and have some. But yeah, so human design, I'm familiar with it. I've only just barely brushed against it. So I haven't studied that at all, but I know it's closely linked to the I Ching. Like, there are a lot of people, I've come across a lot of people who study I Ching in regard to that. But I fancy myself a devotee of Ma, and who is, of course, sacred Mother Darkness, or time, close association with the void, and that sort of aspect. Definitely, I like to adhere to the Taoist philosophy of know the yang but cling to the yin.
Yeah, you feel like home. Your energy feels like home.
Nice.
Yeah, nice, cozy, warm void.
Coincidentally, I am nice and cozy and warm.
Let us why don't we start with what you're most passionate about recently related to the I Ching or Taoism, and maybe talk about that. And then the second part will be let's do a reading for the collective. But I like to start with that, to get the inspiration flowing, to get the fire flowing.
Nice. Yeah. So this last week or so, I've been really, I'm going to try and lean forward, get into the light a little bit better here. I'm the chaos of the home. I'm out in my van right now. So
I love the trees so much and the light coming
yeah,
through. Wonderful.
I live out in the forest, actually, in isolation. I practice asceticism, and that's part of why I'm out here, actually, is it's been rainy for the past couple of days and overcast, and we don't have city power. So my solar is drained. So I'm out in the van where I have a little power, and I also have 2 dogs. So it's just better lighting, and we won't get puppies jumping up on me. But most recently, this last few days, actually, excuse me, I've been goofing around with the I Ching in reference to a procedurally generated role-playing game. So kind of on the heels of what I was just saying about, or your introduction rather, of the I Ching as an interactive, like a choose your own oracle sort of thing. I started just kind of goofing around with it. I've played some D&D or whatever back in the day, and I started thinking, well, yeah, that's not very far off from like just like a role-playing game, because you have all this like wealth of um, experiences, of instances, of events already sort of cataloged for us. And I started thinking about it. I was like, man, you could really like do something where, rather than uh, just for fun, rather than a real world application, like using it in a in a fantasy application of a game and sort of gamifying it. And so I started, I don't know if you're familiar with the plum blossom method, but I started exploring it in terms of that because it's very simplified. Um, and then taking the 5 Chinese phases, or the 5 elements from Chinese philosophy, and using those as like your stats, right? Like, so your endurance points or hit points, and then your movement speed, and using the 5 elements for different stats. And then now the stats can interact according to the rules of the plum blossom method of I Ching. Really fascinating study. Turned out to be a horribly boring game, so you you won't see me publishing that, but it was really interesting to do the study. And I just love that. It just speaks to the wonderful variety of application in the I Ching. Everything from the stock market to health to exercise, through Tai Chi Chuan, astrology, or even game design. Like music has been a thing I've been talking with some people about lately, I Ching in regards to music composition. And it's not something I've dug into really deeply, but it's a fascinating idea. And I know a lot of people have played around with that. So, yeah, um, that's been the latest thing just over the last few days, is really playing around with just some more sort of fun applications. I bear with me here for a second. I'm gonna put myself on do not disturb. I realize I didn't do that. So there we go.
I wanted to know your thoughts on I've been having the line about the Queen Mother of the West. I'll receive now a blessing from the Queen Mother of the West. This is the only time I had a spirit come to me and say do a reading, and then that's the line that I got, and I keep getting it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So different translations help me to not decode. Do you know the hexagram and line number you're referring to?
One
And by
moment.
number,
Give me a moment.
sure. Just for the record, I generally defer to Huang's translation. I find it to be really useful. After that, I strongly recommend for anyone listening to hit James DeCorn's website, because he stacks up several different translations together so they're easily referenced. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool.
I'll probably tell you another time.
Okay, yeah. Um, I'm just like I can't bring it to mind, but I think the one you're referencing is something about blessings from your grandmother or great mother.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what line that is from. Is that? Yeah, I can't bring it to mind.
Could it be 50, maybe?
Let's see. I've got my handy book here, so I'm gonna.
No, not 50. Maybe 14 or 15.
I was thinking. Maybe this is a fun game.
I know, right?
There are so many. I mean, it's
Treasure
worth
hunt.
mentioning. There are 64 hexagrams with 6 or 7 lines on each. I know a lot of them off the top of my head, but even after 30 years, I don't have them all memorized. But yeah, it's not coming to mind. I could do a quick text search in my online version, but I'd have to pick up my phone and then.
I think it's 35. Yeah, it's 35. I just Googled. I'll see you online real quick. Ben and Bell Wen is the book I use. Her book on it.
Oh, I don't know that edition. I've got several, but maybe half a dozen different translations of
35 line 2.
A bunch. Ah, yes. So Huang has proceeding forward with worry, being steadfast and upright, good fortune, receiving this great blessing from his grandmother. So this speaks to, of course, receiving reassurance. When it says grandmother, it's often, in my experience, the allusion will be literal. I wouldn't look to your grandmother specifically, but the matriarch is what it's really trying to say. I actually prefer the translation great mother, like as separate. So the implication is possibly grandmother, but more importantly, the matriarchal influence. So being unsure of your position and then being reassured from a matriarchal position of, and again, not necessarily even female so much as yin is the reference. Well, get into the technical aspects of it a little bit of, so this is in reference to the second line concording with the fifth line, being the grandmother, the mother in the ruling position, or the yin yielding line in the fifth position, corresponding, or rather relating to, but not corresponding to. We always want to see yin and yang match. So if the second line is yin, we'd like to see fifth line yang, but thus cause for worry, but they do relate. So in this case, I think the counsel would be, yeah, look to the strong feminine influences to find reassurance and help in your situation. In the particular situation, I mean, maybe not actually even a physical person, but strong, likely, very likely it's an actual person, but looking to strong feminine support, a strong feminine influence giving you support. And that's where you're going to find your best help in this situation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's open it up to, let's do an invocation. If you want to lead the invocation, and then we'll do a reading for the collective here. Just anyone who watches this video from now till, you know, all of the digital stuff burns down or whatever. I don't know.
Right. Do you have a particular faith tradition you like to adhere to? I generally like to open my I Ching readings with the Gayatri mantra because it seems so wonderfully appropriate. I don't know if you're
Prince
familiar
Singh,
with
I don't
that.
usually do that one. I did that one for 45 minutes today. So I really don't usually do that. I usually am doing like Venus and Jupiter. So this is, yeah, we're on sync.
But you say you were just doing the Gayatri.
Yeah, today, in addition to Jupiter and Venus for like, yeah, 30 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. What a wonderful coincidence. So I'm not going to do a bunch of repetitions. I'll just do one, but Om Bhur Bhuva Svaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om. Wonderful. Do you have coins handy? Would you like to toss, or I can? I have mine here.
I'll toss. I'm curious. Or wait, maybe, yeah. So we can combine the energy. Like I'll do the. I used one of these.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Have you seen that used in teaching before?
I've seen it, but not in practice. So this is actually a fun thing for me. I do yarrow, I do coins. Nice. I have coins very similar.
Those are from Japan 400 years ago.
Nice, nice.
Got some powerful chi on them.
Yeah.
Speak to us about the collective that is watching this. Give us a message that will bring them closer to harmony. Okay, 3 tails, 3 heads, 3 tails, 2 heads, 2 tails, 2 tails. That was 6?
Yep.
Excellent.
Oh, I just scribed that left-handed. I have to now decode my own handwriting. So we have the whole lower trigram is changing. That's interesting. And we have wind over water dispersing.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's the what,
Um,
59? You
yes.
know why that's insane? You know why
What's
that's so insane? Because that's the hexagram I associate with this channel. And when I did like, okay, what's my collaboration? I keep getting like 59. So it's
interesting?
a theme. Yeah.
It's very auspicious for media broadcast, of course, because dispersing could be dispersing of goods, dispersing of information, but that's the theme. So it's always interesting to me when we have, and then it's changing into household, 37. Um, uh, but it's always interesting to me when the entire trigram changes.
Wait, so how
Uh,
many lines are changing?
3 changing lines. We have the first, the second, and the third are all changing. So the lower trigram is now water is becoming fire. So from danger or motion flowing into clinging, coming together, brightness, um, which is auspicious. Um, so because we have 3 changing lines, usually we always want to just defer to a single line so we don't get things too overly complicated. And since we have 2 changing or active yin lines and 1 active yang line, we're going to go ahead and read the yang. That's kind of the rule of thumb, is the exception. If you have 3 lines, 2 of one and 1 of the other. So the text we get, again, Huang's translation: dispersing, hurrying to an opportune moment, regret vanishes. So that's good. It definitely tells us that the time to act is now. The way is open. Um, and I'm just trying to think on my toes here, but the lower trigram being the inner trigram, generally representative of you or your position, the inner experience, um, changing from darkness to brightness, is wonderful. You could say it's a correction. So the path is improving. Household, of course, speaks to setting your affairs in order. So the approaching hexagram speaks to setting your affairs in order, getting your house in order. And so in this case, yeah, I would say what we really, it's always interesting because the E, it's going to speak to you. So it's your reading for them. Um, the moment is here. Seize the moment. Serve your purpose. And in the commentary, the Confucius commentary, dispersing, hurrying to an opportune moment, his will is fulfilled. And with the approaching gua, that is to say, with household as the approaching gua, your will is fulfilled, your affairs are put in order. It's a good time for creating community, whether the household is, in this case, I would say it's the larger household of your online viewership, of the folks watching us right now. So bringing that household into unity and into cooperation is wonderful. Looking at the Fanyao, the continuation of the second line into from the initial hexagram into the approaching hexagram is the position of the mother in the household, the second line. So I would say the illusion is, if I were to create an image of the situation, it is lighting the hearth fire.
Wow.
There's a ton of analysis that you can do. And I mean, I can easily spend a whole afternoon on a single reading. Things to consider: the core hexagram, in this case, is nourishing, which, and then the core hexagram becoming is not yet fulfilled. I don't know if you play with Hugua at all, the core hexagrams, but we could say that the root of the situation, or the thing that causes us to want to cast.
What is that word that you said? The
Hugua.
What is this Hugua?
So that's the core hexagram, and that you get the core hexagram by taking the second, third, and fourth line of the hexagram for your lower trigram, and the third, fourth, and fifth line for your upper trigram, giving you a new hexagram. So in this case, it becomes, I want to say 28.
Wait, repeat that. You take
27, sorry. Lines 2, 3, and 4, and that creates a trigram. And then you take lines.
And that's 2, 3, 4 of 59 in this example.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Right. And then 3, 4, 5. So in this case, it's firm, yielding.
3, 4, 5 of 37 in this example.
No, 3, 4, 5 of, so just looking at the initial of the primary, 2, 3, 4, and then 3, 4, 5.
Oh, and then you use that to make a new
hex.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the energy of.
Yes, that's the root cause or source of the.
Oh wow! So what's that hexagram?
Hexagram 27, nourishing, which speaks to nourishing the body or the mind. Usually, depending on the changing lines, I would defer to feeding the body, but the quote is a wonderful quote: "Watch what is in your mouth."
Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
And then if we look at the approaching hexagram and do the same thing again, we end up with hexagram 64, not yet fulfilled, which of course speaks to work that needs to be done. So we're going from a position of looking at the core issues here. We're going from feed me, or let me feed you. Let's look at our nourishment. Definitely tracks with what we're doing here today, and becomes not yet fulfilled, or the job to be done. So
and how do you find the job to be done? What hexagram you did that?
So that's from the approaching hexagram. So if we look at 37, household, and we do 2, 3, 4, and 3, 4, 5 off of that, gives us yielding, firm, yielding, firm, yielding, firm, which is our hexagram 64, which Huang has as not yet fulfilled. Do you see what I'm doing there?
Yeah, I'm recording, or I'm writing it. so I can
Nice.
absorb it deeper. Super cool. Wow. And
What
then,
a wonderful reminder for everyone. In I Ching, always refer back to your readings in the future. That's the classic rookie mistake, is someone does a reading, they take in the information, they meditate on it, and they put it down. That's not the nature of the oracle. It's speaking to things that have not yet come into consciousness, the subtle things that you may not have noticed yet. So it's always imperative that you refer back to your readings. And to that end, it's a great idea to include a time scale in your inquiry, in your question in the first place, if it's appropriate, for what you're asking.
And then, okay, what was that? The 37 core hexagram technique and that's called what in Chinese again?
Hu Gua.
Hu Gua. And yeah, the Hu Gua. And okay, doing that with the secondary hexagram with the Hu Gua, that is looking at so not the root issue, but it's rather looking at the.
So it would be the same sort of thing of the core issue of what. So we're looking at coming from a core situation of nourishing or seeking nourishment, and it's becoming the core issue becomes hexagram 64, not yet fulfilled. So, of course, the core hexagrams, there are only 16 of them because it's a reduction. So it's taking the 16 sort of root causes of the larger 64 hexagrams.
Yeah, so there's only 16 Hu Gua.
Mm-hmm. So all of the other that come out of it are derivative of that. The one hexagram, you have a whole set of, don't make me do the math off the top of my head, but yeah, you have a set of hexagrams that are derivative of that core hexagram. So that's just another really interesting way to analyze your readings and get more context. I usually, if I'm doing a really in-depth reading and I'm really sitting down with it, I'll look at the core hexagrams. I look at the approaching. I'll also look at the sequence in the book, the King Wen's sequence of hexagrams. So since we're looking at 59, I would also look at 58 and 60 to see how those play out. That can give you a really good indicator of sort of the usual course of events, because that's the idea of King Wen's sequence, is that 58 usually will become 59. 59 will generally tend into 60 and go on like that. There are a ton of different ways to approach this, though, to get derivative hexagrams. You can use the ideal hexagrams, where you translate from the after heaven trigram and how that relates to the before heaven sequence. Not a huge fan of that one. I use a little bit here and there, but the inverted hexagram, so we could look at water over lake. Inversing becomes, that's actually is restricting. Or the inverse, which would be, what is that? Thunder over fire, abundance, 55. So you can create a ton of different hexagrams out of one reading.
Can we focus on the for the people who are not I Ching, let's focus on their readings. So what is the I Ching trying to communicate with the people watching and what is it saying to us in the audience? What is it? Yeah.
Let me give you the text how I would just read it as a poem. So I would start with the decision of our primary gua. Then I would read our changing line. Now we have 3 changing lines, so I would call the second line. And then we would go to the decision of the approaching hexagram. So let me just get over to that real quick.
Approaching means the first or second?
The second. So you've got your initial
second.
And then the approaching hexagram. Yeah. So just read as a poem, we're going to say, dispersing, prosperous and smooth, the king arrives at the temple, favorable to cross great rivers, favorable to be steadfast and upright. Dispersing, hurrying to an opportune moment, regret vanishes. Household, favorable for a woman to be steadfast and upright. Okay, let's decode some of that symbolism real quick. In the decision, the king arrives at the temple, that is to say, the ceremony being conducted. Seek out the auspicious power that is being presented, favorable to cross great rivers. I would definitely read that in this context for our listeners. Engage with the oracle. Come to the oracle yourself, fine listener. Come and learn and do a reading. Crossing great rivers, that's symbology for a big undertaking, not necessarily crossing a river. So engage with the I Ching. Come and, rather than, I would here in this case substitute the king arrives at the temple with the oracle is here for you. Come and engage with the oracle, hurrying to an opportune moment. The time is now. Come and do it now. Regret vanishes. Allow the oracle to disperse that wisdom to you. Does that track? You hear where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Coming back to household, favorable for a woman to be steadfast and upright. Let's back that up. We're not talking about male-female. We're talking about traditional patriarchal male-female roles. So favorable for a woman is more to say, to be steadfast and upright. It's favorable to be open, yielding, compassionate, yin energy, to embrace the yin energy. Taken as a whole, I would say it's a call to action to engage with the oracle, to be open and receptive to it, and to allow it to help you set your affairs, your household, to set your affairs in order. You have some experience, Lugal. What do you see in it?
One moment.
It's just for the reader, it's interesting to me, or the listener, I guess, it's really interesting to me how context is everything, because the very same reading against a different inquiry, you can have vastly different interpretations. That's not to say that it's a matter of intuition. It's most of what I do mostly resembles math more than anything else. That understanding the symbology that's being employed. But if I were doing a reading about my child, household would have a very different implication than it does, for example, with our reading today.
I think that they have I think that their family or their housing situation is giving them inspiration and causing them to be consumed. And through their growth, through their dedication to, what's right, they're able to be immune from the consumption while also bringing great growth and continue to grow with less of themselves being consumed in the situation. I'm trying to use just the Wu Jing for that.
Mm. Yeah, if we look at the core hexagrams, again, coming back to that, is nourishing becoming not yet fulfilled. That's to say that it corresponds with what you're saying, that there's growth that can be developed. So nourishing, again, being either physical, mental, emotional, spiritual nourishment, becoming not yet fulfilled, is telling me that, yeah, there's a great deal of growth potential, great deal of work to do, but not in a bad way at all. Like the work is being undertaken, or at least there's a call to action to engage with that work.
How do you see wood and water? Yeah, wood over water versus changing into wood over fire, just looking at the Wu Jing.
Yeah, so that says to me the external environment, usually your physical environment, slowly penetrating. So it speaks to, it is receptive. It's a yin trigram, wood or wind, you could go either way, is receptive, it's yin, but it's slow. It's a slow penetration. So I wouldn't expect to be lighting any fires under people's butts, so to speak, so much as just an encouraging, right? And a slow push forward. The lower trigram, generally the internal cause. Water is darkness, danger, motion. A yang trigram, becoming fire, and it's completely inverting. That's very interesting to me. So although the penetration is not, I wouldn't anticipate swift reaction, there's definitely a light bulb turning on there. Like I said before, I like the image here of lighting the hearth fire. There's a lot of different ways to look at the symbology of the trigrams. But I generally think of these in particular as, I think of wood or wind over water, but then in household in 37, I think of it as wood over fire, being an image of a home, the wood structure with the fire inside warming the inhabitants. So in this case, the internal is in a complete reversal from darkness into light. So I like to imagine that we've just flipped on a light bulb for someone, that somebody is like, oh, and that's going to be a slow development. I wouldn't, again, that's both implied in the upper trigram being wood or wind, but it also is implied in the core hexagram of the approaching hexagram. So the hugwa of the approaching hexagram being not yet fulfilled, that's not a situation of like, boom, it's done now, here it is. But it's that first spark of like the fire is caught and it's going to start growing and really developing.
Wow, beautiful. So can you summarize what in a little bit different way, summarize the takeaway for the person listening? What is spirit? What is the oracle communicating to them? What should they pay attention to, or like what's changing, or what's, yeah.
So the direct advice here is hurrying to an opportune moment, regret vanishes. Seize the moment. That spark that we've just lit, I would anticipate for your listeners, something has just clicked, not in a huge life-changing way, but there's been a spark. It's essential that you fan that flame and you do it now. Tomorrow, the day after, it's going to die down. There's work that needs to be done. It's not a thing that happened right now. It's a thing that started right now. So the advice for the listener is, I'll just say it bluntly, right now, your listeners, go grab 3 coins. Just pennies are fine, whatever. I mean, better is better. I use solid silver coins and I love them, but don't worry about that. Get 3 coins. If you don't own a copy of the I Ching, of course you don't. No one in the West does, but if you happen to, go grab it off the shelf, cast the coins, and do a reading right now. So the advice, the call to action is take this as inspiration for yourself, do a reading, cast the coins. We can go into instruction if you want, but it's easy enough to just Google up how you do a 3-coin reading. Cast the coins, hit Decorn's website, and it's free online. You can go and look up your hexagram and the active lines and do a reading for yourself right now. The Oracle said so, not me.
Yeah, so everyone thank you for stopping by. We really appreciate your liking and sharing, subscribing, because we want to bring the I Ching to more people and bring more spiritualization, the energy of the Tao, symbiosis to this society. Please check out his work. Consider booking a session with him, as well as you can book a divination, astrology, I Ching, tarot session with me in the Patreon. And we appreciate all of your support for this channel that's been running for over 10 years. So, yeah, everyone have a magical, magical time. Peace.